Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Ashley Barlow Company podcast. I'm Ashley Barlow, your host. If you are a parent, a teacher, or someone who works at a school, or you're a community member, a volunteer, or a staff member at an organization that supports people with special education plans, a coach, a tutor, or even a grandparent, you're in the right place. Sit back with an ice cold glass of lemonade, put on your walking shoes and grab some headphones, roll down the windows and cruise. Ready, set, go. Educate, advocate, collaborate. Welcome back to another episode of Special Education Advocacy with Ashley Barlow. I'm Ashley Barlow, and I'm so happy you're here. I think it's funny that I start episodes telling you who I am because, when I am feeling overwhelmed, I always say, I don't even know who I am. But then I say my name at least once a week, and I think it's funny. We're going to talk today. We're going to kind of follow up today on last week's episode. In last week's episode, we talked about what to do if you're feeling kind of uninspired in your advocacy. And in this week's episode, I want to talk about community. I want to talk about one of the tips in last week's episode was kind of connecting with community and seeing if that helps, if it inspires you more. And so in this week's episode, I want to talk about places where you can seek community in your special education where you might not think that you would find it. As I've kind of lived the last few weeks, as I've been thinking about these topics, I've kept a little bit of a list and I've done a little bit of research on lists. And so I've got a pretty long list. It's bullet pointed and numbered in some places, but I would say we're going to go through over probably 15 different categories, some super obvious and some not so obvious at all. And in true Ashley Barlow fashion, it is not super organized. But first, I have something super exciting to tell you. We are getting ready to celebrate our 200th episode of Special Education Advocacy with Ashley Barlow, which cracks me up. You probably know that this podcast, this entire business was dreamed up during the viewing of Frozen 2, the trippiest movie of all time. I can't stand that movie, and I was bored watching it, and I wrote this girl who used to be writing the blogs from my law firm. This was right at the beginning of the pandemic, and I said, hey, should I do a vlog, V-L-O-G, like a video blog, or a blog? And she was like, I don't know, but you should talk to Rachel, this girl I work with on this other project. And so I was like, hey, Rachel, I'm Ashley. Rachel was this is Rachel Harper, my creative director, the one and only amazing person that makes everything so beautiful and gives me all the recommendations. You might notice that my social media has changed a little recently. That's Rachel. And she's just so wise. She was literally moving from Montana all the way across the country to the Midwest. And I was like, hey, you, vlog or blog. And by the end of Frozen 2, I had a check written to pay Rachel a sizable amount of money to build a website. I had the concept of this dreamt up. I had a questionnaire by Amy Porterfield, who does online marketing, completed and scanned and sent to Rachel. And I had a focus group planned for the very next day to form Ashley Barlow Company. So that's how I move. If I know something sounds good, then I'm like, let's do it. And now here we are 4 years later. And I'm just so pleased to be here. Still, though, I can't believe that we are coming up on 200 episodes. But yes, 4 times 52 ends up to be somewhere in the neighborhood of 200. So this has been such a joy and it's been so great. And it's all about you, right? You guys write me with ideas and you guys ask questions in advocacy meetings and online. And then I'm like, well, I can make a podcast for that. And you send me people to connect with. And it's just such a joy to connect with you guys. And so we are making the 200th episode interactive. I want to answer your questions. They can be questions about my business. They can be questions about becoming an advocate. They can be questions about advocacy. They can be questions about me. No guarantee I'll answer questions about Jack because I really share just about everything that I am comfortable sharing. But have at it. Ask me questions. So the way that we're doing this is we're using a website or app called SpeakPipe. And you can literally go to SpeakPipe and record your questions. And then I'm going to answer them. So the link is speakpipe.com, SpeakPipe, SpeakPipe.com / I think it's / Ashley Barlow. Now, I'm going to put that in the show notes. So wherever you listen, you can also just go to the show notes and you'll get like a link. What do they call it? Like a hot link or I don't know, whatever. Where you can click on that and then you can record questions for me. If you don't want to record them, send them to me and I will read them. But I really want your voices because I want, like, you can make the question as long as you want. So I really hope that you will interact and that you'll give me your questions so that our 200th episode will be super fun. We're also going to do some like giveaways that week and some exciting celebrations. And so stay tuned because we got some good stuff coming up here in the months of August and September. Okay, there we go. Let's talk. Oh, I also rewatched last week's episode and now I see I'm doing it again. I don't think a ton of you watch on YouTube, but if you do, and I am distractingly playing with my hair, I know that I'm doing it. Well, I don't, but I rewatched last week's and I was like, that's annoying. I always apologize for my fidgetiness because I have a broken back and I'm never comfortable. I also am playing with my hair a lot because it feels and looks terrible because I've spent so much time with Jack in the pool. And so it feels like a Barbie doll's hair. Like it's like cottony and weird and it's very shiny. It looks like a little girl's hair in the summertime. Anyway, I'm constantly trying to get rid of it. And so I'm sorry that I'm playing with it. And believe me, I'm trying, but I just am distracted by it. Okay, let's move on. So here's the thing. Here's the topic for this week. Community is so important in special education altogether. As we said last week, you know, a lot of us go through kind of like waxes and wanes of, I don't know if those are nouns or not, but I just made them. Let's say it this way. Our dedication, our inspiration to our special education advocacy efforts waxes and wanes. And that's normal and it's fine. But if we need it to wax, then we have to look for inspiration. And I think a really good way to look for inspiration is community. I also just think community is super important. So whether or not you're looking for community because it's important and we know that, research tells us that, experience tells us that, whatever, or you're looking for community because you aren't inspired, this episode's for you. Now, there are folks inside special education where we can find community, and there are a ton of kind of non-conventional ways where we can find community in our special education advocacy and support roles. And like, I'll tell you, I mean, I kind of joke. There's this adorable coffee shop here in my little town. It's now owned by one of my childhood friends. And I go there like once or twice, especially now that my office is at home. I go there to work. So I go, you know, a couple times a week. I actually meet with clients because there's shared workspace there, etc. But if my hair looks good, I almost always go to the coffee shop because I'm like, I gotta take this hair out somewhere. Like, more people need to see this hair than just these people on this school team. And I kind of joke, but it actually might be true. I think I might just be happier if I look okay. Which obviously today I'm very happy and my hair is driving me crazy, as I just said. Anyway, a lot of times I go up to the coffee shop when I have an hour with a project that I could do today, I could do in the future. And I'm like, I wonder if there's any connection up there. I wonder if there's anybody to like chit chat with. So a lot of times for me, the connection happens kind of serendipitously. And sometimes that's the best connection. Sometimes you end up recommending a book to somebody and then you get like super jazzed about the book, or somebody recommends a podcast to you or a documentary to you. And you're like, oh, I need to learn more about letterboarding or whatever it is. And so these things happen kind of serendipitously sometimes, but I also think that we need to go out and look for them. And I definitely do that as well. So like I said, some of these things are super obvious, some of them are not. Can you get connection? Can you get community? Can you get inspiration from the people on your team, like your special educators, your paras or IAs, instructional assistants, your speech therapist, OT, PT, school psychologist, your behavior support people, your BCBAs, your BTs, those folks? Yeah, I think you can get community from them. I think you can get inspiration from them. In my experience and in my professional experience, I would think that the most community comes from either super supportive teachers that really understand your kids and are super respectful to your kids, or from IAs, paraprofessionals, like the support people, the aides in the classroom, who like do the nitty-gritty day-to-day support for kids with more significant disabilities. Regardless, I think the trend is that if you find somebody that really like appreciates your kid and really seems to understand them and goes the extra mile to protect them and to support them, then there's some community in that. But I'm talking about those like fill your cup conversations. Now, I have those with a lot of people. I have those at least every 3 years with our school psych, who really just kind of sees eye to eye with me on a lot of testing issues, which is such a fortunate thing. I have that definitely with Jack's teachers. Yesterday, I stopped to give him his medicine because I haven't done the form. Like, I always say, do as I say, don't do as I do. I haven't done the form for them to give him his medicine at school. And I stopped, and he was just having like the best little chat with his aides. There were 3 of them. They were like having lunch and chatting. And like that was community in and of itself, because then like we just had a 10-minute conversation that just like super celebrated Jack and some of Jack's like funny interests and that kind of stuff. So like I think that you can find it there, especially if you can like kind of unify around just loving your kid and supporting your kid. But for a lot of you, you're like, enough about the people at the school because that's too much. So there might be people at school that are not super connected to the IEP team too. For me, there's always been an administrator that just like says all of the things to make me know that they like totally get it. And I'm like, yes, you are my people and you are his people. And like, they'll tell me a story or they will respond to a question that you're like, oh my gosh. Example right now is Jack's principal is like that. And his last principal was too. Like, they just get him. And our school sends kids to Washington, D.C., and I had always kind of like hoped that Jack would have the endurance and the social skills and the interest to do Washington, D.C. And I definitely think he has the interest, and I think he has the physical capability, but he's going to need a lot more accommodations than what was in my dream. And that's okay. But before I say like, this is what we're going to do, this is how we're going to do it, like, I think I'll probably just carve our own path and I'll take him. I think one of his buddies and one of their parents will probably come with us too. I am going to go to this principal because I just know that she loves and appreciates and gets and supports him. And I'm like, before I go independent and I'm like, oh, we're going to be in the city at the same time and we'll come to a dinner or two with you all, I'm going to ask if she has any ideas, because like she might come up with something that's far more inclusive and far more appropriate because she's in there in the trenches with him and she leads the whole school. So like sometimes there is, a diamond in the rough. And in my case, there's very little rough and there's a lot of diamonds. And I'm lucky, but I've also worked very hard for those relationships. But there's other people in the school, like maybe it's the counselor or the social worker. Heck, maybe it's the social studies teacher. Somebody that just gets them and loves them and can kind of like be your eyes and your ears and help with that. Then beyond school, peers. I was scrolling through Facebook a few days ago and I found somebody that has helped a lot with Jack recently. And I discovered that this person has had relationships with folks with Down syndrome literally since grade school, and has always gone to the buddy walk, and has always gone to prom with kids with Down syndrome, and has always like gone to the bars and appreciated friends even into adulthood that have Down syndrome. And I'm like, yep, you're the community person. You really get it. It's not gratuitous. It is true friendship, true appreciation, true support, true like co-regulation, true appreciation. And man, there's so much community in that. And like knowing that about this person will help me to help that person to appreciate Jack. And so that is inspiring to me. That is a great community building thing for me. Parent support groups. I've talked about my little group of moms of kids that have Down syndrome. And I have to say, I'm not one of those people that's super tied into that group like on a regular basis, but I'm not really tied into any group on a regular basis. I'm a pretty independent person. I have a few best friends that I talk to pretty often. And then I've got like larger community that I talk to less often. But there's some of you that have like a Down syndrome mom group or a dyslexia mom group, and that's where your community is. And regardless of how often you talk to those people, the community that you get with those people always fills your cup. My little Kentucky moms group, we shut down restaurants about twice a year. That's about all I actually need and about all I can access because all the other things that we do. But we literally will stay at a restaurant until 10 o'clock at night or 11 o'clock at night on a weeknight and just chat. And like sometimes we're complaining about our kids. I mean, all in one thing. We've got complaints, we've got funny stories, we've got like pull your hair out stories, we've got inspirational stories. And you pull those little nuggets away. And for me, I always wake up like appreciating our situation and ready to go do some tasks and dive into some additional advocacy and appreciation for him. So those like organized parent support groups, yeah, but like finding your people is like super duper helpful. That kind of goes hand in hand with community-based organizations, but I put that next. Like for us, it's our Down Syndrome Association. But it might be, other community-based organizations. Like we have found a lot of community for Jack and our club swim team. I'll give them a shout out because if you're local, I cannot recommend the Cincinnati Marlins enough. We have a para training group that is just incredible, so supportive, such wonderful community, and just an absolutely lovely place to be where I just know that Jack is fully supported and he's not like welcome to just like take a place. He is like, Jack makes an impact on an environment where he goes. And it's just a lovely, lovely place. So it might be your disability organization. It might be your local hospital. It might be your therapy clinic. It might be one of your teams, but it might be like your after school thing, like that community recreation center, whatever that is. But those places can offer programs, workshops, things to kind of like complement what's happening at school, but they also can provide like real true community and love and support, and that is super helpful. And don't forget those exist on the local level and the national level. So there's like the International Dyslexia Association, there's Autism Speaks, there is, and I am not super in touch with either of those at the moment, so there might be more popular ones at the moment, but those are ones that exist, right? There's National Down Syndrome Congress, there's National Down Syndrome Society, there's Global Down Syndrome, there's Down Syndrome Affiliates in Action, there's like, all of the things. There's a Down Syndrome Medical Interest Group, right? Like, so whatever applies to your situation and that advocacy effort that's available. Similarly, don't forget that your medical people sometimes provide community. So at a lot of pediatricians' office and specialist office, there are advocates that can help you to get insight, to suggest modifications, to suggest accommodations, to suggest advocacy strategies, to suggest additional resources, etc. And you might find real community there. My pediatrician is constantly connecting me with families and conferences and professionals, because he knows I do this professionally, and half the time it's to get something from me and half the time it's to give something to me. And so, those people can provide a lot of community and a lot of resources. Again, so we aren't doing this alone. Same thing goes for your outside therapists and tutors and providers. So that might be speech, OT, PT, tutors, music therapy. It might be, back to your teams and community organizations. Those activities obviously reinforce things that are happening at school, but they might see things through a different lens that helps you then to advocate. Like, maybe you get a new diagnosis and then you're jazzed to go to school, right? Like, we just got a new diagnosis for Griffin that's going to really impact his swimming. And I can't wait to talk to his coaches about this respiratory condition that he has. And so, it's just knowing that, I'm like, oh, I can't wait. I can't wait to have the conversation with the coach and to make sure that Griffin's doing this and that. And, it's just exciting. That can be inspiring. Obviously, family and friends, that's who I've got here next. Obviously, they are, helpful for community. I think a lot of people, this is equally frustrating and empowering. But if we just focus on the positive, finding the friends that really take the time to get it, nobody's going to get it in the beginning. But when you've got a friend that asks enough questions or that shows up when they need for you to be there, those are the ones that are inspiring, right? I think I talked enough about this summer that you probably know that we had a highly discriminatory thing happen to us at our pool this summer. And our pool is our happy place. It's where Jack can order things on his own. It's where he can practice the math skills of how much money to take up there to get his slushie. It is where he's got friends that just drop in and he doesn't know who's going to be there, but he might end up playing with a friend for 3 hours. It is where he has community. And it's one of the few places where he has community. So then it was even more painful to have this discriminatory thing happen. And one of our friends showed up, the dad never comes to the pool. And he showed up at the pool and he even wore a pink bathing suit because he was I just was going to be happy. He was I heard that Mrs. Barlow had a bad day and I thought if I came to the pool, she would be happy. And it was so adorable because he knew that his presence was just going to make me happy. It was going to make me silly and he was going to play gutter ball with us and we were going to have fun. And those kinds of friends, they don't walk our day-to-day lives. They don't know what we struggle with, but they've had other struggles and they can kind of relate to other struggles and perspective building things. And so, I completely acknowledge that friends and family is tricky, but if you really do focus on the group of people, or that in some cases few people that do get it, it can really help with your community. And again, you aren't walking through it alone. Similarly, some of you might have folks that provide your respite care or your waiver services or your DD services, your babysitting, community support, respite people. Obviously, they can become part of your family and they can not only help you when you're burned out and when you need childcare or supports in the community, but they can also really provide some insight that can be inspiring and help you to advocate and to be interested in advocating. Similarly, a lot of us get that at church from religious leaders, from spiritual leaders. We find community there. And let's see, where else? Oh, in that category, mentors and life coaches and therapists and counselors sometimes are able to help us in that regard. And then I've got some that we can just tick through because a lot of them don't need a ton of additional help. So educational consultants, educational advocates obviously are quite helpful. Folks at your library can be helpful. Supportive employers can definitely help us feel like we aren't going through this alone. Community centers, nonprofit organizations, peer support groups for your kids, especially your other kids. Sometimes we can find good community there. Government agencies like your USAID, your SPIN, your Protection and Advocacy, your, like Budsman type stuff can be quite helpful. And then transition programs, programs where your kids are out developing skills to transition to adulthood. We can find a lot of support there. And they can offer us like the hard skills and the soft skills for our kids to then transition. And we can get a lot of community there and a lot of ideas there. Again, the idea here is that we are not at this alone, and together we are better. And so if we rely on one another, we are more successful. I will leave you with one little thought that has resonated with me a lot. I say I'm wildly independent. I don't like to ask for help. I don't really like to get help, but I love people that like bully their way into helping me and actually take care of me, which apparently must be hard because it doesn't happen often. But like one time my aunt, who had been a corporate attorney for her entire career, she was babysitting Jack when he was little, and I came home with an ear infection, and I was like, okay, Aunt Roseanne, you can head out. And she goes, honey, you're right, I can head out, but I am not leaving here until you have seen someone whose name ends in MD. And she was saying, you get yourself to the Kroger clinic and you get yourself an antibiotic, and then I will leave. But I'm not letting you care for Jack until that ear is getting treated. And I so appreciated it because I was just going to muscle through and, end up super sick. So I read recently that there's a lot of good research that suggests that if we ask for help, we are more likable. Research shows that people are better liked when they ask for help. And the help could be as easy as, hey, would you put sunscreen on my back? Or can you tie this for me? I can't reach. Or like, I just can't get it together. Is there any chance that you could run through Chick-fil-A and bring us dinner? I mean, it could be something that's actually inconvenient for people, but the research shows that if you ask for help, you are more liked. So that's kind of the nature of this. We aren't going at it alone. People want to help one another. Humans are wired for community, and we have a lot of opportunity for community. So if we shift the framework in our thinking and we think like, man, humans need community, and I have the opportunity to rely on community a lot, this is a huge blessing, and it really is a huge, huge blessing and a huge, huge honor to be able to advocate for our kids and to be able to continue to learn about them and from them and for them. So I hope that is helpful to you. And don't forget to hop over to that link that I will put down in the show notes so that you can contribute to our 200th episode, which is upcoming. I hope you have a great week. I'll see you next week, same time, same place.